The massive alien ship appeared above Earth without warning. It was bigger than any city, its dark metal surface covered with strange lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. People around the world stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens in shock. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the emergency meeting room deep inside the Pentagon. Military leaders and scientists filled the room, all talking at once. The alien ship had been silent for 3 days. No communication, no threats, just floating there like a metal moon. They could destroy us in seconds, General Hayes said, sweat dripping from his forehead. Our best weapons would be like throwing rocks at a tank. Sarah nodded but kept her eyes on the data screens. She had spent 20 years in the Navy, commanded 3 different ships, and survived 2 wars. Nothing in her experience prepared her for this moment, but she stayed calm. That was what she did best. The silence broke when every screen in the room suddenly showed the same image. An alien face appeared, tall and thin with silver skin and large black eyes. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English. "Humans of Earth," the alien said in a voice that sounded like wind through metal. "I am Ambassador Ziltuk of the Galactic Empire. Your species has been discovered and evaluated. You are primitive, but show potential for useful labor." The room fell completely quiet. Sarah felt her hands clench into fists. The alien continued. "According to Imperial law, all new species must undergo the trial of worth. Most species choose to submit peacefully and become servants of the Empire. This is the wise choice. The trial has never been completed in the 10,000 years of Imperial history." President Williams leaned forward. "What happens if we refuse both options?" The alien's expression did not change. "Refusal means your planet will be sterilized. Your species will be removed from existence. This is also legal under Imperial law." Sarah stood up. Every person in the room turned to look at her. She had been quiet during the entire meeting, but now she felt something burning in her chest. It was the same feeling she got before every dangerous mission. "What exactly is this trial of worth?" she asked. The alien seemed surprised by the question. "It consists of 3 challenges, each designed to test the limits of intelligence, courage, and adaptability. No species has ever completed even one challenge successfully. Most surrender after seeing what they must face. And if we complete all 3 challenges?" "Impossible," the alien said. "But if such a thing occurred, Imperial law would grant your species equal status within the Empire. This has never happened because it cannot happen." Sarah looked around the room. She saw fear in every face except one. Dr. James Wu, the mission psychologist, was actually smiling slightly. He caught her eye and nodded once. "We accept the trial," Sarah said clearly. The room exploded with voices. People shouted at her, called her crazy, demanded she take back her words. But Sarah kept looking at the screen where the alien's face showed what might have been shock. "You accept all 3 challenges?" "Yes." The alien was quiet for a long moment. "This is unexpected. No species has ever accepted the complete trial. Are you certain? Your entire species will face extinction when you fail." Sarah felt that burning feeling grow stronger. "We're certain." "Very well. A trial ship will be provided. You may select a crew of 50 humans to represent your species. The challenges will begin in 7 days. The screen went black. General Hayes grabbed Sarah's arm. "What have you done? You just condemned our entire planet." Sarah pulled free and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the alien ship hanging in the sky like a dark promise. "No," she said. "I gave us a chance." Dr. Wu joined her at the window. "You realize they expect us to fail quickly and beg for mercy." "I know. You also realize that might be the smart play. Slavery is better than extinction." Sarah turned to face the room full of angry, frightened faces. "How many of you have children?" Most hands went up slowly. "I have a daughter. She's 16 and wants to be an astronaut. When I was 16, people said women couldn't be pilots. When my mother was 16, people said women couldn't vote. Every generation of humans has faced something impossible and made it possible." She pointed at the alien ship through the window. Those aliens have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They think they know everything. They think we're just another weak species that will bow down and give up. They have no idea what humans do when someone tells us something is impossible. President Williams stood up. Captain Chen, I'm giving you full authority to select your crew and represent humanity in this trial. God help us all. 1 week later, Sarah stood on the bridge of humanity's first faster-than-light ship. It was crude compared to the alien vessels built from their technology but designed by human hands. The crew of 50 represented the best of humanity. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, doctors, pilots, and even a high school teacher who had won 17 chess championships. The alien escort ships guided them toward a massive space station at the edge of the solar system. Sarah had never seen anything so large. It looked like a metal planet covered with towers and lights. "Captain," called Navigation Officer Marcus Torres, "I'm getting readings I've never seen before. Space itself seems wrong near that station." Sarah nodded. She had expected this. Nothing about the trial would be normal or easy. They docked at the station and were escorted by tall alien guards to a huge chamber filled with representatives from dozens of species. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange Sarah couldn't tell which end was their head. All of them stared at the human crew with expressions that seemed to mix curiosity with pity. At the center of the chamber sat a creature that could only be the judge. It was ancient, with skin like old leather and eyes that held the weight of centuries. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire room. "Humans of Earth, you stand before the Galactic Court to face the trial of worth. In 10,000 years, no species has completed these challenges. Most fail within minutes of seeing what they must face. Do you wish to reconsider and accept peaceful servitude?" Sarah stepped forward. Around her, she felt her crew stand a little straighter. "We're ready for the first challenge." The ancient judge made a sound that might have been laughter. "Very well. The first challenge is the Void Maze. You must navigate a region of space where the laws of physics break down and reality becomes fluid. Most crews return insane if they return at all." Sarah looked back at her crew. She saw Marcus checking his navigation equipment, Engineer Lisa Park already thinking about backup systems, Dr. Wu taking notes in his small notebook. None of them looked afraid. They looked excited. "When do we start?" Sarah asked. The judge's expression changed to something like surprise. "Immediately, if you insist on this foolishness." As they walked back to their ship, Sarah heard alien voices whispering in languages she didn't understand. She caught a few words that the translator converted. Brave, stupid, doomed. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was impossible. But Sarah had learned something important in her years of command. Humans didn't survive by avoiding the impossible. They survived by walking straight into it and finding a way through. The first challenge waited somewhere in the darkness of space, in a place where ships went to die and crews went insane. Sarah smiled as she settled into the captain's chair. She couldn't wait to see what humanity would do next. The void maze looked like a hole torn in space itself. Sarah stared at the view screen and tried to understand what she was seeing. The normal black of space ended at a sharp line, beyond which existed something that hurt to look at directly. Colors that had no names swirled and twisted. Stars appeared and vanished. Space seemed to fold in on itself like paper being crumpled by invisible hands. "Captain, our sensors are going crazy," reported Science Officer Dr. Lisa Park. She was a small woman with quick hands and a mind that could solve any engineering problem. Right now, she looked confused for the first time since Sarah had known her. "The readings don't make sense. Distance, time, gravity. Nothing is working the way it should." The alien guide ship kept its distance from the void's edge. Ambassador Ziltak's voice came through the communication system, sounding almost bored. "The Nexus Void has existed for millions of years. It is a region where the fundamental laws of reality break down. Your primitive minds will not be able to process what you experience inside. Most crews begin screaming within minutes." Sarah looked around her bridge crew. Marcus Torres sat at navigation, his usual calm expression replaced by intense focus. Dr. James Wu, the mission psychologist, was actually smiling as he watched the impossible view. Engineer Lisa Park had already started modifying sensor equipment, with spare parts from her toolkit. The Empire provides you with their best navigation computer, Ziltok continued. It has successfully mapped 93% of known space. Inside the void, you must reach the center and retrieve a quantum crystal. This crystal proves you have survived the challenge. The navigation computer was a cube of alien metal, covered with lights that pulsed in complex patterns. According to the technical manual, it could calculate the position of any object in the galaxy within seconds. "Okay, people," Sarah said to her crew. "We've flown through hurricanes, nebulas, and asteroid fields. This is just another navigation problem." "Doctor," Wu raised his hand. "Captain, with respect, this is not like anything we've ever faced. The alien guide specifically mentioned that most minds cannot handle what they see inside the void." Sarah nodded. "And that's exactly why we might succeed, where others failed. Human minds evolved on Earth. Our planet threw everything at us. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, floods, diseases. We learned to adapt to conditions that change constantly." She turned to Marcus. "What do you think? Can you navigate through something that doesn't follow normal rules?" Marcus studied the readings on his screen. "Captain, I've been flying since I was 16. Started with crop dusters in Kansas. Went through Navy flight training, commanded 3 different ship classes. Every flight has been about reading conditions that change constantly. Wind, weather, equipment failures." He looked up with a slight grin. "This just looks like really weird weather to me." Sarah smiled back. "Lisa, can you keep our ship running if technology starts failing?" The engineer held up a bag of spare parts and tools. "I've kept ships running, with duct tape and spare wire. If their fancy alien tech breaks down, I'll fix it with whatever I can find." Sarah felt that familiar burning sensation in her chest. "Then let's show these aliens how humans handle impossible situations." They crossed into the void maze. Immediately, every alarm on the ship started blaring. The navigation computer made a sound like electronic screaming, its lights flashing in panic patterns before going completely dark. The view screen showed images that shouldn't exist. Space twisted into spirals, stars that burned backward, planets that existed in multiple places at once. The alien crew members they had brought as observers began making distressed sounds. 2 of them collapsed immediately, curled into balls and shaking. A third started speaking rapidly in its own language, words that the translator couldn't convert. But the human crew reacted differently. "Wow," Dr. Wu said, pulling out his notebook. "This is fascinating. The visual contradictions are creating cognitive dissonance, but look at Marcus, he's adapting already." Marcus had closed his eyes and was moving his hands over the manual controls like he was feeling his way through the ship's movements. "Captain, the normal instruments don't work here, but I can feel how the ship responds to the weird currents. It's like flying through a storm where the wind changes direction every second, but there's still a pattern." Sarah watched him work. Marcus had grown up flying small planes through tornado country. He learned to read weather that could kill him in seconds. Now he was applying those same instincts to space that didn't follow normal rules. "The navigation computer is completely fried," Lisa reported. She had torn open several wall panels and was connecting wires by hand. "But I think I can rig something that responds to local conditions instead of trying to calculate absolute positions." "Doctor," Wu walked calmly around the bridge, taking notes while space twisted around them. "The psychological effect is quite manageable if you don't try to make logical sense of what you're seeing. It's like looking at abstract art. You experience it rather than analyze it." An alien observer made a sound like a siren wail. Sarah looked over and saw it staring at the view screen with all 4 of its eyes wide open. Its skin had turned a pale color that probably meant terror. "Dr. Wu, can you help our alien friends?" "Already on it, Captain." Wu knelt beside the distressed alien and spoke in a calm, quiet voice. "Don't try to understand what you're seeing. Just breathe and focus on my voice." The alien looked at him with an expression of complete confusion. How are you not screaming? This place destroys minds. Reality itself is broken." Wu smiled kindly. Reality isn't broken, it's just different here. Humans are very good at adapting to different conditions. 3 hours into the void maze, Marcus had developed a system for navigation that looked like controlled falling. He would point the ship toward what felt like the right direction, let the strange currents carry them, then adjust when he sensed they were drifting off course. "I'm getting something that might be the center," he reported. "There's a presence ahead, something solid in all this chaos." Sarah could see it too. Through the swirling, impossible colors, a structure appeared that hurt to look at directly. It was geometric but wrong, like a building designed by someone who had never heard of normal mathematics. "That's it," Lisa said, looking up from her jury-rigged sensors. "High energy readings. Whatever we're looking for is in there." The alien. Observers had gone completely silent. They huddled together at the back of the bridge, occasionally making small whimpering sounds. As they approached the structure, Sarah realized something that made her smile. "Marcus, how are you feeling?" "Honestly, Captain, this is the most fun I've had flying in years. It's like every rule I ever learned is wrong, so I get to figure out completely new ways to fly." Lisa laughed from inside the wall panel where she was still connecting wires. "Same here. Half our systems have failed, so I'm inventing new ways to make things work. It's like the ultimate engineering puzzle." Dr. Wu looked up from his notes. "I should mention that I feel remarkably calm. This environment should be causing severe psychological stress, but instead I find it quite stimulating. It's like my mind is finally getting a workout." Sarah realized the truth. The void maze was designed to break minds that expected reality to follow consistent rules. But humans had evolved on a planet where the rules changed constantly. Earthquakes rewrote the landscape overnight. Ice ages froze and thawed continents. Volcanoes created new islands while hurricanes destroyed old ones. Humans didn't expect reality to stay the same. They expected it to change, and they had learned to change with it. They docked with the impossible structure, and Sarah led a small team inside. The architecture made no sense. Stairs that went up and down at the same time, rooms that were bigger inside than outside, corridors that looped back on themselves while somehow leading forward. "This is like a fun house," Marcus commented, walking up a wall that had decided to become a floor. They found the quantum crystal in a chamber at the center of the structure. It was beautiful, a piece of crystallized light that sang with harmonious frequencies. Sarah picked it up carefully and felt its warmth through her gloves. "Mission accomplished," she said. The trip back through the void maze took only 2 hours. Marcus had figured out the patterns well enough to navigate efficiently. Lisa had built a completely new navigation system from spare parts and alien technology. Dr. Wu had pages of notes about how human psychology handled impossible environments. When they emerged from the void and rejoined the alien guide ship, Ambassador Ziltak's voice came through the communication system. For the first time, it sounded shaken. "This is impossible. No species has ever successfully navigated the void maze. How did you maintain mental stability in an environment designed to cause madness?" Sarah looked at her crew, all of them grinning and energized by their success. "We're human," she said simply. "Impossible is just another word for interesting." The maelstrom of Karthek looked like a hurricane made of lightning and screams. Sarah watched it approach on the view screen, a massive storm system that stretched across space for thousands of kilometers. Inside the swirling clouds, she could see flashes of light that moved with purpose as if the storm itself was alive and thinking. "Captain, I'm reading massive psychic energy signatures," Dr. Wu reported from his position at the science station. "This isn't just a storm. It's some kind of telepathic entity that feeds on fear and negative emotions." The alien guide ship had retreated to what they called a safe distance. Ambassador Ziltak's voice came through the communication system, and for the first time since they had met him, he sounded genuinely concerned. "The maelstrom has consumed thousands of ships over the centuries. It reads minds, manifests your deepest fears, and feeds on the terror it creates. Most crews go insane before their ships are destroyed. Even our strongest warriors break under its assault." Sarah studied the storm. Lightning crackled between clouds that seemed to shift and move like living tissue. Sometimes she thought she could see faces in the patterns. Angry, hungry faces with too many teeth. "What exactly do we need to do?" she asked. "Fly into the center of the storm and retrieve a piece of its core. The core is pure psychic energy, crystallized over millions of years. But first you must survive the storm's mental attacks. It will show you your worst nightmares made real." Sarah looked around her bridge crew. They had been together for 3 weeks now, and she had learned to read their moods. Marcus sat at the pilot station, fingers dancing over the controls as he studied the storm's movement patterns. Lisa was already checking the ship's systems and preparing backup equipment. Dr. Wu had his notebook out and was actually smiling. The alien observers they carried looked terrified. One of them, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, was making a low humming sound that their translator said meant distress. "Dr. Wu," Sarah said, "what's your professional opinion about our chances of surviving a telepathic attack?" Wu looked up from his notes. "Well, Captain, fear is primarily about the unknown and loss of control. Humans have an unusual relationship with both concepts. We evolved as persistence hunters. We chased prey for hours or days until it collapsed from exhaustion. That requires facing the unknown repeatedly and maintaining control under stress." He gestured at the storm. "More importantly, humans are one of the few species that seeks out fear for entertainment. We tell ghost stories, watch horror movies, ride roller coasters, jump out of perfectly good airplanes for fun. We've actually trained ourselves to find terror exciting." Marcus laughed. "Doc's got a point. My sister loves horror movies, the scarier the better. She always said regular people run from monsters, but humans buy tickets to see them." Sarah felt that familiar burning sensation in her chest. "So what you're saying is that this storm picked the wrong species to terrorize?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Wu replied. Sarah opened the ship-wide communication channel. "Attention all crew. We're about to enter a telepathic storm that feeds on fear. It's going to show us our worst nightmares and try to drive us insane. Remember that humans have been dealing with nightmares since we first learned to dream. Whatever this thing shows us, it's not real. It's just another challenge to overcome." They flew into the maelstrom. Immediately, the ship was surrounded by swirling clouds that pressed against the hull like grasping fingers. The view screen flickered and suddenly showed Sarah's childhood home burning while her parents screamed for help. She blinked and the image changed to her daughter lying in a hospital bed dying from an alien plague. "It's trying to establish a psychic connection," Dr. Wu reported calmly, even as his console showed images of him being buried alive. "The manifestations are quite sophisticated. It's reading our memories and fears. The alien observers were not handling the assault well. 2 of them had collapsed, making sounds like electronic static. A third was pressed against the wall, staring in horror at something only it could see. But the human crew reacted differently." "Okay, that's pretty creepy," Marcus said as his controls showed him crashing every ship he had ever flown. "But I've seen worse at the movie theater. At least this monster is trying too hard." Lisa was working on the ship's systems while her tools occasionally turned into spiders or snakes. "The psychological pressure is causing some equipment failures, but nothing I can't fix. Hey, Storm, you'll have to do better than making my wrench look scary." Sarah watched the view screen cycle through different versions of her worst fears. Her daughter dying, her crew abandoning her, her planet being destroyed. But instead of terror, she felt something else. Annoyance. "You know what bothers me most about this?" she said to Dr. Wu. "It's not very creative. Threatening my family, showing me death, that's horror 101. Where's the imagination?" Wu was taking notes while his notebook occasionally burst into flames or filled with screaming voices. "I'm getting some fascinating data on how psychic entities construct fear responses. It's using very standard psychological triggers: separation, anxiety, mortality fears, social rejection. Rather basic, really." The storm seemed to sense their lack of fear and intensified its attacks. The ship shuddered as massive tentacles made of lightning wrapped around the hull. The walls began bleeding. The floor occasionally turned into a bottomless pit. One of the alien observers finally broke completely, making a sound like a siren, at maximum volume before falling unconscious. Poor guy. Marcus said, smoothly piloting the ship through a maze of what looked like giant teeth. He's probably never seen a creature feature film. This is like Tuesday night at the drive-in. As they flew deeper into the storm, it began trying different approaches. Instead of showing them personal fears, it started manifesting universal terrors. Endless darkness, crushing pressure, being trapped alone forever. Now this is interesting, Dr. Wu said, as the bridge filled with the sensation of drowning in endless space. It's moving beyond personal psychology and trying archetypal fears, quite sophisticated. Sarah found herself floating in black water that stretched in all directions, unable to breathe, unable to swim. But instead of panic, she felt curious. How was the storm creating such realistic sensations? What was the mechanism behind the telepathic projection? "Captain," Lisa called out, and Sarah realized she was back on the bridge. The drowning sensation had been completely convincing. "I'm reading some kind of energy core ahead. That might be what we're looking for." The core of the storm was a ball of pure psychic energy that pulsed with angry red light. Around it swirled the concentrated fears and nightmares of thousands of species. Sarah could see fragments of alien terror, creatures she didn't recognize fleeing from danger she couldn't understand. "There's our target," she said. "Marcus, can you get us close enough to retrieve a sample?" "No problem, Captain. This storm flies like an angry hurricane, but hurricanes have patterns. I grew up in Florida. This is just a really weird category. 5. As they approached the core, the storm made one final attempt to break them. It pulled all their fears together into a single massive assault. Sarah found herself simultaneously drowning, burning, falling, being crushed, buried alive, and watching everyone she loved die. But she had realized something important. The storm fed on fear, which meant fear made it stronger. So instead of being afraid, she decided to be something else entirely. She started laughing. "This is ridiculous," she said out loud. "I'm being attacked by the psychological equivalent of a haunted house, and not even a good one." Dr. Wu joined in her laughter. "You're right, Captain. This is like being scared by a children's story. Once you understand the mechanism, it becomes quite amusing." Marcus was chuckling as he navigated through what appeared to be a maze made of screaming faces. "My 5-year-old nephew could come up with scarier stuff than this. Where are the zombies? Where's the serial killer with a chainsaw?" The storm's attacks began to weaken. For the first time in its existence, it was encountering minds that found its terrors entertaining rather than traumatic. The psychic feedback seemed to confuse it. "I think we're actually hurting it," Dr. Wu observed. "It's designed to feed on fear, but laughter and amusement are having the opposite effect. We're starving it." Sarah felt the storm's confusion like a physical presence. It had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years, broken the minds of countless civilizations. But humans were laughing at its best efforts. "Lisa, can you get us a sample of that core?" "Already on it, Captain." Lisa had rigged a collection device from spare parts and alien technology. "Just need to get close enough to grab a piece." As they approached the core, the storm made what felt like a desperate attempt to save itself. It tried to manifest their deepest, most primal fears. But humans had been telling themselves scary stories around campfires for thousands of years. They had learned to turn fear into entertainment, terror into excitement. The sample collection was almost anticlimactic. Lisa's device grabbed a piece of crystallized psychic energy while the storm writhed around them like a frustrated child having a tantrum. As they flew out of the maelstrom, Sarah realized something that made her smile. The ancient, terrifying storm that had broken thousands of civilizations was actually running away from them. Its clouds were pulling. The chamber was vast and silent, filled with the kind of quiet that made people whisper. At its center sat the overmind of Zephyros, a massive construct of crystalline processors and quantum circuits that hummed with 50,000 years of accumulated knowledge. It was beautiful in the way that perfect mathematics was beautiful, all clean lines and glowing connections that pulsed with computational power. Sarah stood beside the game table with Amy Rodriguez, watching the high school math teacher from Ohio study the playing field. Amy looked completely ordinary. Average height, brown hair, wearing the same simple clothes she had worn when teaching algebra to teenagers just a month ago. Next to the ancient artificial intelligence that had never lost a contest of intellect, she seemed impossibly small. The game is called Infinite Convergence, Ambassador Ziltak explained to the gathered crowd of alien observers. Representatives from dozens of species filled the viewing galleries, all here to witness what they expected to be humanity's final failure. It is played on a multidimensional board, where the rules change based on the moves made. The Overmind has perfected this game over millennia. The board itself was a work of art, a complex three-dimensional grid that extended into dimensions Sarah couldn't quite see. Pieces of pure light moved along paths that twisted through space in ways that hurt to follow. The rules, as far as Sarah could understand them, involved capturing territory while the very nature of territory shifted with each move. Most challengers forfeit within minutes, Ziltak continued. When they realize the mathematical impossibility, a victory against an intelligence that can calculate billions of variables simultaneously. The Overmind's voice filled the chamber, deep and resonant like the sound of distant thunder. Human representative, you may begin when ready. I have allocated 0.003 seconds of processing time to this game, which is more than adequate for any organic intelligence. Amy looked up from the board and smiled the same patient smile she used when explaining fractions to confused students. Thank you. That's very considerate. She made her first move, a simple placement of a light piece in what appeared to be a completely random location. The board shimmered and reconfigured itself around her move, creating new pathways and possibilities. The Overmind responded instantly, placing its piece in a position that seemed to control 3 different dimensions simultaneously. The mathematical elegance of the move was obvious even to Sarah, who barely understood the rules. Interesting choice, Amy said, studying the new configuration. She made her second move, again seemingly random. Sarah watched from the sidelines, with Dr. Wu and Marcus. The alien observers were already making sounds that their translators converted as pity and inevitable defeat. Most were betting on how many moves Amy would last before surrendering. She's not calculating, Dr. Wu observed quietly. Look at her body language. She's not running through mathematical possibilities like you'd expect. She's just playing. Marcus nodded. Reminds me of my daughter playing chess. She doesn't know all the formal strategies, so she just moves pieces where they feel right. The game continued. The Overmind made moves of stunning mathematical precision, each one building on the last in patterns that spoke of centuries of analysis and optimization. Amy responded with moves that seemed almost childlike in their simplicity. But something strange was happening. The board, which should have been dominated by the Overmind's superior strategy, was developing in unexpected ways. Amy's random-seeming moves were creating patterns that the ancient intelligence couldn't predict. Curious, the Overmind said, after Amy's 7th move. Your strategy does not match any known game theory. Are you following a system I have not encountered? Amy looked up with that same patient teacher smile. I don't really have a system. I just try to think about what the board wants to happen next. The alien observers fell completely silent. Several made gestures that Sarah's translator said meant confusion and impossible concept. The board does not want anything, the bull. Overmind responded. It is a mathematical construct with defined parameters. Well, yes, Amy agreed, making another move that seemed to ignore the Overmind's carefully constructed positional advantage. But it's also a game. Games want to be fun. They want to surprise you. Sarah began to understand what was happening. The Overmind was playing infinite convergence as a mathematical problem to be solved. It had analyzed every possible move, calculated every advantage, optimized every strategy. But Amy was playing it as something else entirely, as a conversation with the game itself. The Overmind's next move took longer, almost a full second, which was an eternity for an intelligence that normally operated in microseconds. Your playing style is inefficient, it said. You sacrifice pieces without gaining material advantage. You ignore obvious tactical opportunities. By all mathematical analysis, you should have lost 17 moves ago. Amy shrugged. Math is a tool, not a rule. I use it in my classroom, but I don't let it tell me how to teach. Every student is different, every problem is different. Sometimes the math says something is impossible, but the student does it anyway. She made another move, and Sarah saw something that made her gasp. Amy had just sacrificed her most powerful piece, leaving herself apparently defenseless. The alien observers made sounds of dismay. Even Dr. Wu looked concerned. But the Overmind hesitated. For the first time in its 50,000-year existence, it encountered a position it couldn't fully analyze. Amy's sacrifice had created a web of possibilities that didn't fit any known strategic framework. Why did you make that move? The Overmind asked. Amy looked at the board thoughtfully. It felt like the right thing to do. Sometimes in teaching, you have to give up what seems important to help a student understand something bigger. The Overmind was quiet for nearly 10 seconds, an unprecedented delay that sent whispers through the alien observers. When it finally moved, Sarah could see that its perfect mathematical precision was beginning to crack. The move was still strategically sound, but it lacked the elegant certainty of its earlier plays. Amy responded immediately, making a series of moves that seemed to flow naturally from her earlier sacrifice. Suddenly, the board's configuration revealed a pattern that no one had seen before, including the Overmind. This position is not in my database, the ancient intelligence said, and for the first time, its voice carried what might have been uncertainty. That's okay, Amy said kindly. I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm just following where the game leads me. The game entered a phase that none of the alien observers had ever seen. The board itself seemed to be evolving, creating new rules and possibilities as Amy and the Overmind played. But where the Overmind tried to calculate and control these changes, Amy simply adapted to them. This is impossible, muttered one of the alien observers. No organic mind can process the mathematical complexity of an evolving game matrix. But Amy wasn't processing mathematical complexity. She was doing something much simpler and infinitely more complex. She was playing with intuition, creativity, and the kind of pattern recognition that came from 30 years of teaching mathematics to minds that didn't think like machines. The turning point came when Amy made a move that seemed to violate the basic rules of the game. She placed a piece in a position that shouldn't have been possible, creating a configuration that made several of the alien mathematicians in the audience cry out in confusion. That move is mathematically illegal, the Overmind stated. Amy looked at the board and tilted her head thoughtfully. Is it? Or did the board just create a new rule we haven't seen before? The Overmind analyzed the position for nearly a minute. Finally, it spoke in a voice that carried what could only be described as wonder. You are correct. The game matrix has evolved to allow this configuration. This is unprecedented. Amy smiled. Games are like students. They grow and change when you give them room to surprise you. The final phase of the game was unlike anything in the galaxy's recorded history. Amy and the Overmind were no longer playing by the rules of infinite convergence. They were creating a new game together, one move at a time. But while the Overmind struggled to analyze each new possibility, Amy flowed with the changes like water flowing around rocks. She had spent her career working with minds that learned differently, thought differently, and solved problems in ways that didn't fit standard patterns. The end came suddenly. Amy made a move that seemed almost trivial, a simple repositioning of a minor piece. But it completed a pattern that had been building throughout the entire game, a pattern so complex and elegant that it satisfied every rule the game had created and destroyed the Overmind's position simultaneously. The ancient intelligence stared at the board for 5 full minutes before speaking. I do not understand how you achieved victory. Amy packed up her small bag and stood. I teach kids, she said simply. You learn to think like someone who doesn't know the rules yet. They see possibilities that adults miss because we're too busy remembering what's supposed to be impossible. The chamber erupted in chaos as alien observers tried to process what they had witnessed. The Overmind, which had never lost a contest of intellect, had been defeated by a human who barely understood. the game she was playing. As they left the chamber, Sarah walked beside Amy. How did you know? The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Empire was the largest enclosed space Sarah had ever seen. Representatives from 10,000 worlds sat in rows that stretched up into the darkness above, while holographic displays showed the proceedings to billions more across the galaxy. At the center of it all sat Emperor Zalthek of the Zephyrians, an ancient being whose crystalline form had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Sarah stood with her crew in the defendant's circle, surrounded by armed guards, who looked nervous despite carrying weapons that could destroy cities. The humans had completed all 3 impossible challenges, and now the Empire faced a problem that had never occurred in 10,000 years of galactic law. Humans of Earth. The Emperor's voice resonated through the hall like the sound of breaking glass. You have achieved something that was deemed impossible by every mathematical model, every historical precedent, and every law of probability. You have completed the trial of worth. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Sarah could hear the translations coming through her communicator. Words like unprecedented, anomalous, and dangerous repeated in dozens of languages. Emperor Zalthek continued. However, the ancient laws provide no guidance for this situation. No species has ever passed the trial because no species was believed capable of passing it. The trial was designed to be impossible. Sarah felt that familiar burning sensation in her chest. Your Honor, are you saying that even though we completed your challenges, you're not going to honor your agreement? A wave of shocked sounds went through the assembly. Several delegates made gestures that Sarah's translator said meant insolence and death wish. Speaking directly to the Emperor without permission was apparently a serious violation of protocol, but Emperor Zalthek seemed more curious than offended. Captain Chen, your species continues to surprise us. Most beings would show proper deference when addressing the ruler of the galaxy. Sarah straightened her shoulders. With respect, Your Honor, we're not most beings. We're human. We've spent our entire history being told that things were impossible, and we've spent our entire history proving that wrong. Dr. Wu stepped forward, slightly. Emperor, if I may add something from a psychological perspective. The Emperor gestured for him to continue. The trial of worth was designed to test the limits of intelligence, courage, and adaptability, but it was designed by species that evolved in stable, predictable environments. You created challenges that would break minds that expect reality to follow consistent rules. Wu pulled out his notebook, somehow managing to look like a professor, giving a lecture even while standing before the ruler of the galaxy. Humans evolved on Earth. What we now understand was a death world by galactic standards. Constant climate changes, natural disasters, disease, predators, resource scarcity. Our entire evolutionary history has been about adapting to impossible situations and turning disadvantages into advantages. Marcus spoke up from his position beside Sarah. Doc's right. We didn't pass your challenges despite being human. We passed them because we're human. Emperor Zalthek was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke in a voice that carried the weight of millennia. You are suggesting that humanity is not merely another species, but represents a fundamentally different type of evolution, an evolution that specializes in overcoming impossibility. That's exactly what we're suggesting, Sarah said. Every generation of humans has faced something that the previous generation thought was impossible. We've learned to see impossible as just another word for not yet attempted. The Emperor turned to address the full assembly. Emergency session. All department heads will convene immediately to analyze the implications of humanity's success. As the Great Hall emptied, Sarah and her crew were escorted to a waiting chamber. Through the transparent walls, they could see alien officials rushing back and forth, their movements suggesting panic and confusion. Captain, Amy Rodriguez said quietly, I think we might have scared them more than that storm did. She was right. Over the next several hours, Sarah watched through the chamber walls as the greatest minds in the galaxy struggled with a problem they had never imagined facing. What do you do with a species that turns impossible into inevitable? Finally, they were brought back to the assembly hall. This time, the atmosphere was different. The casual confidence that had marked the earlier proceedings was gone, replaced by something that felt like fear. Emperor Zalthek spoke without preamble. The Empire's analysis is complete. Humanity represents an unprecedented evolutionary development, a species that has adapted specifically to overcome impossible challenges. Our xenobiologists, psychologists, and strategic analysts all reach the same conclusion. Sarah waited, feeling the tension in the massive hall. You are dangerous, the Emperor continued. Not because of your technology, which is primitive. Not because of your military, which is non-existent by galactic standards. You are dangerous because you refuse to accept limitations that other species consider absolute laws of nature. Sarah felt her crew tense beside her, but she kept her voice steady. So what happens now? The Empire offers humanity full membership and equal status within the galactic community. Shocked sounds came from all around the assembly hall. Several delegates stood up, making protests in languages Sarah couldn't understand. However, the Emperor continued, raising a hand for silence. This offer comes with conditions. Humanity will be restricted to designated sectors. Your expansion will be limited and monitored. Your interaction with other species will be carefully controlled. Sarah felt that burning sensation grow stronger. You're offering us membership, but only if we agree to be caged. We are offering you survival, Emperor Zalthek replied. The alternative is what happened to the last species that refused to accept limitations. Images appeared on the holographic displays around the hall, dead worlds, empty star systems, the remains of civilizations that had been wiped from existence. The Empire maintains order through predictability, the Emperor explained. Species that threaten that order are eliminated. We would prefer not to eliminate humanity, as you have proven to be interesting. But we cannot allow you to spread unconstrained throughout the galaxy. Sarah looked at her crew. Marcus was staring at the images of destroyed worlds with a fighter pilot's assessment of threats. Lisa was studying the chamber security systems with an engineer's eye for weaknesses. Dr. Wu was taking notes, as always. Amy looked like a teacher who had just realized her students were planning something that would get everyone in trouble. What, if we refuse both options? Sarah asked. The Emperor's crystalline form flickered with what might have been surprise. That would be unprecedented and foolish. No single species can stand against the combined might of the Galactic Empire. Sarah smiled, and several of the alien delegates made sounds that their translators said meant alarm and predatory behavior detected. Your Honor, 3 weeks ago, you told us that no species could complete the trial of worth. You were wrong about that. Maybe you're wrong about this too. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted at each other. Guards raised their weapons, and alarms began sounding throughout the station. But Sarah kept her eyes on Emperor Zalthek, and she saw something there that made her smile grow wider. Behind the ancient authority and the crystalline composure, she saw something she recognized from every impossible situation she had ever faced. Uncertainty, fear, the beginning of doubt. Captain Chen, the Emperor said when the chaos finally died down, are you refusing the Empire's offer of controlled membership? We're not refusing it, Your Honor. We're negotiating. More shocked sounds from the assembly. Sarah continued. Here's what we propose. Give us one sector of space, the roughest, most dangerous, most impossible sector you've got. The place where other species go to die. Let us settle there and see what happens. And if you succeed in taming an impossible region, then maybe it's time for the galaxy to learn that impossible just means no one's tried the right approach yet. Emperor Zalthek was quiet for nearly 5 minutes. Finally, he spoke. There is a region at the edge of the galaxy called the Shattered Zone. It contains black holes, unstable stars, and space-time anomalies that have killed every expedition sent there. The Empire has written it off as completely uninhabitable. Sarah felt her crew straighten with excitement beside her. That sounds perfect, she said. If humanity can successfully establish a colony in the Shattered Zone and maintain it for 10 standard years, the Empire will reconsider its position on human expansion. And if we fail, then the galaxy will have one less impossible species to worry about. Sarah extended her hand to the Emperor, a gesture that sent new waves of shock through the assembly. Deal. The crystalline being looked at her hand for a moment, then reached out with one of its own appendages. The contact sent a sensation like touching lightning through Sarah's arm. Deal, Emperor Zalthek agreed, though I suspect we may have just made a terrible mistake. As they left the assembly hall, Sarah could hear alien voices discussing the implications in worried tones. Several delegates were already talking about contingency plans and defensive measures. Captain, Dr. Wu said as they walked back to their ship, I think you just